Okay. Hello, everybody. So my name is Daniel Avila. I am currently a postdoc at UC Leuven. And so today I'm going to talk to you about this work, applying high-performance computing to the European Resource Adequacy Assessment. This is a work that we have performed in collaboration with my former PhD supervisor, Anthony Papavasiliou. We also have collaborated here with my former master's supervisor, Mauricio Junca from Los Andes University in Colombia. And from the industry side, we have collaborated with Laxaros Exidis from ENSOI. So the outline of this presentation is as follows. So I will begin by providing you a brief context and motivation of the work that we have performed. Next, I will describe the problem formulation. Then I will describe the proposed approach that we have followed in order to solve the problem. And finally, I will describe some results. So let's start with this first part, which corresponds to the context and motivation. So what is the European Resource Adequacy Assessment? So the European Resource Adequacy Assessment, commonly just referred as ERA, aims at measuring the ability of the power system to react to future uncertain conditions. So the study is developed on a yearly basis. So each year a new ERA version is going live, each version being better than the previous one. And this study is conducted by the European Network of Transmission System Operators for Electricity, commonly just referred as ENSOI. So what's this study in a nutshell? So in this study, what you do is that you simulate the power network for the upcoming future at an EU scale, and then you measure these adequacy metrics. So what are these adequacy metrics? These are just some metrics that allow you to measure the blackout. So this leads us to the motivation for our work. So in order to, let's say, perform this ERA study, you would like to simulate the power network for the upcoming years. So this is a problem that is going to happen in the future. So therefore, we need to estimate how the power network will look like in the future. So within the ERA study, this problem of calculating how the power network will look like in the future is called the Economic Viability Assessment problem, commonly just referred as the EVA problem. And so essentially here with this EVA problem, what you would like to do is to calculate an expansion plan, and you would like to calculate this expansion plan for each one of the different countries or zones of the pan-European region. So what's concretely an expansion plan? So an expansion plan is a combination of expansion and retirement opportunities of power plants. And we want to do this calculation for the entire pan-European network. Now, something important to keep in mind is that we are going to have uncertainty in this problem. Why is this? Because as we want to estimate this for the future, so in the future, well, we don't know exactly what is going to happen. We are not sure on which are going to be the precise climatic future conditions. The only thing that we are going to know is that we are going to have some possible set of possible future conditions for this future. So that means that the expansion plan that we want to calculate must behave optimally under uncertainty. And this leads us to the front of stochastic optimization. So for this stochastic optimization problem, we want to calculate an expansion plan, taking into account that we are not entirely sure on what's going to happen in the future, but we just have some set of possible climatic conditions in this future. Concretely, what ENSOI does, or what ENSOI considers, is that there are 35 climatic conditions. And so we want to calculate this expansion plan so that it behaves optimally, taking into account these possible future 35 climatic conditions. And what is interesting about this problem is that so far the ability to solve a stochastic EVA problem has been limited. And so this leads us to our research question. So concretely, we're interested in 2 points. So first of all, we are interested in knowing if somehow we can tackle this stochastic EVA to trying to find a way to solve this problem. And secondly, we are interested in knowing whether the fact that we are able to solve this problem actually means something in terms of adequacy. So it could be the case that we do a really hard work in order to find this stochastic solution, but maybe, and in fact, there are easy ways to provide some easy deterministic approximation for this stochastic solution. So we may have these two solutions. So we want to understand how are they different in terms of adequacy, because at the end, the objective of this ERA study is adequacy. So what have we done in our approach? We have used the composition methods in combination with a high performance computing infrastructure. So now let's proceed to the next section, which is the problem formulation. So this problem is a standard capacity generation expansion problem. So here in the objective function, what we would like to do is to minimize the investment costs. We would like also to maximize the savings that we are going to obtain for retiring capacity. And we also would like to minimize the operational costs of the system. Now, note here that in the operational costs, we have an expected value operator. Why we have this expected value operator? Because we are actually deciding, let's say, today an expansion plan, but we are going to operate the system in the future. So we have a variety of conditions for this future. And so here, this is why we introduce here this expected value. Now, in terms of constraints, we have the following. So this problem is going to be subject to some expansion constraints. So some constraints on the maximum amount of capacity that we may want to invest, on the maximum retirements. We also have our load balance constraints. We also have some technical constraints on the generators. Here, something that I would like to clarify is that we actually don't model, we are not considering here a unit commitment model. We also consider transmission network constraints. So for this base case scenario that I am going to show you here, we are not considering a flow-based model, but we have performed experiments also including a flow-based model, and we can handle this kind of constraints as well. We also model batteries constraints. And we also model the hydrology. So we model reservoirs, and we also model pumped storage. And something to keep in mind is that for these battery constraints and hydrological constraints, these are going to be time coupled because of the storage. And what we want to do is to model this problem over a full year with hourly resolution. So this means that we are going to have 8,760 time steps. So this is the basic problem that we are interested in solving. So as you can see, this problem is just a two-stage stochastic problem. So in the first stage of this problem, we are going to have that we want to minimize investments and maximize retirement opportunities. And in the second stage, we are going to have our operational problem. And this operational problem is what is commonly just called the economic dispatch problem. So a nice way to graphically visualize this problem is through a lattice representation. So here in this figure, you see a lattice representation. So here in this first node corresponds to the first stage of our problem, which corresponds to minimize the investments and maximize the retirement opportunities. Here at this point, we don't have any uncertainty, so that's why we just have one node. Then in the second stage, which is the economic dispatch problem, we are going to have several nodes, and each one of these nodes corresponds to the economic dispatch problem under a different climatic condition. So this first node corresponds to the economic dispatch problem under the first climatic condition, the second node the economic dispatch under another climatic condition, and so on. And so what ENSOI would like is to have here 35 nodes here in this second stage. So now I would like to discuss a bit on which are the modeling issues behind this formulation. So essentially what happens is that the economic dispatch problem, that is to say the second stage of our problem, is going to be a large-scale linear problem. Why is this? Because we are modeling the full pan-European network, and also, well, we are doing this with quite some granularity. We are going to have 8,760 time steps. And also, well, we have these equations, the ones with the batteries and with the hydrology that are coupling these time steps. And on top of this, we have uncertainty. So we have these 35 climatic uncertain conditions. So if we put all this together, this leads to an untractable formulation. So now, which are some methods that have been proposed in the capacity expansion generation literature in order to try and tackle these problems? So some state-of-the-art techniques include the L-shaped method. We also have progressive hedging algorithm. We have also some constraint generation-based algorithms. But the common issue of between each one of these schemes is that each iteration of each one of these algorithms is going to be non-trivial. Why is this? Because during each iteration of each one of these algorithms, we're required to solve these economic dispatch subproblems. And these economic dispatch subproblems are difficult to solve in the sense that they require a significant amount of computational time, which leads to the fact that each if we apply one of these techniques, each iteration of these techniques is going to take a considerable amount of time. So this leads us to our proposed approach. So our proposed approach, which we have called this second stage relaxation algorithm, works in the following way. So first, let me begin by providing you a brief description or an intuitive description on how the algorithm is working. So let's assume for one moment that our economic dispatch problem, so the second stage problem, is easy to solve. It's not this huge problem, but it's actually something easy and fast to compute. If that's the case, then we are done. We know how to solve problems with this structure. We can apply the L-shaped method, we can apply progressive hedging, we can apply subgradient. Even so, even more, if the size of these problems is small enough, then we can just put the overall problem into its extended formulation and solve it in one shot with a standard solver. So if the economic dispatch problem is small, we know how to solve the problem. So then what we propose is to consider a relaxation of the economic dispatch problem so that we know how to solve this problem. Of course, if we do this, then the expansion plan that we are going to obtain is going to be suboptimal, right? Because we are using a relaxation of the economic dispatch. And as a consequence, what we do then is to refine this approximation of the economic dispatch problem so that eventually we arrive to the true optimal solution. So this is a bit like the intuitive description of the algorithm. So as I told you here, the key idea is going to be this of providing this economic dispatch relaxation. And what is important here is that this is going to be based on a value function decomposition. So let me guide you now through this economic dispatch relaxation. So what we propose here for the economic dispatch relaxation is a chronological decomposition of the economic dispatch problem. So essentially what we do is that here in the second stage, instead of having this huge problem, we decompose this huge problem by these several subproblems. So by these several blocks that you see here, right here. And essentially, each one of these blocks is going to correspond to a 4-day operational problem. And what we do is that we use this first block of 4 days operational problem as an approximation of the economic dispatch problem. And as it is just a 4-day operational problem, then this is going to be easy to solve. Now, of course, there is a big issue if we do this, and is that these blocks don't have access to the information that is going to happen in the future, right? Because here, this first block is just a 4-day operational problem, so it doesn't know what is going on in the future, right? So what we do as a solution is that we attach a value function to each one of these blocks so that we know, so that the effect on what's going to happen in the future is captured. Now, here I haven't told you exactly or precisely what is a value function. So now let me try to briefly explain you what I mean by this. So here on this slide, you see an example of a value function. So here on your y-axis, you have the future costs. On the x-axis, you have the storage level. And so what this graph, what the value function is telling you is that if you have X amount of storage, then you are going to have this amount of future costs in your system. And you can think, for instance, of this X as the amount of water that you have available in your reservoirs, or the amount of energy that you have available in your battery. And also something interesting about these functions is that they are this shape that I have provided right here is not something that I did by chance. Actually, under some conditions, this is always going to be the case. This is always going to be the case that is convex and is formed by these lines. So it's going to be piecewise linear. And actually, in the literature, each one of these lines is what is commonly referred as the cut of the value function. So, okay, now that I have provided you a broad definition of what is a value function, so now let's go back one moment to our relaxed two-stage problem. So essentially what I just told you is that what we are going to do is that we are going to attach a value function to each one of these blocks, so that each one of these blocks know what is going to happen in the future. Then the economic dispatch problem is going to be approximated just by these first blocks of problems. So it is going to be the 4-day operational problem plus the value function. So that's going to be the approximation. And then our overall capacity expansion generation problem is going to be approximated by what is inside of this red dash box. It's going to be our first stage and the our 4-day operational problem plus the value function. So something that now I haven't told you is, well, in order to make this work, we need to calculate a value function approximation, because this is something that we are not given at the beginning of the algorithm. So here with these slides, I wanted just to provide a broad idea on how the algorithms to calculate these value function approximations work. So these are typically iterative schemes. And the idea is that in each one of in each iteration of these algorithms, you are going to calculate a new cut for the value function. So in the first iteration, you are here at this storage level, and what you do is that you calculate a cut for the value function around that storage level. Then in the second iteration, you arrive to a new storage level, and then you calculate a cut for the value function around that storage level. In another iteration, you arrive to a new storage level, and you calculate a cut around that storage level. And you continue in this manner throughout iterations. So now if we put all this together, we arrive to our algorithm, to our second stage relaxation algorithm, which is described as follows. So it's going to be an iterative, two-step process. So in the first step of our technique, what we do is that we solve this relaxed version of our two-stage problem. So just remember that this is the minimization of investment costs. Then this is the 4-day operational problem plus the value function. So we solve this problem using one of these standard techniques. As an output of this step, what we obtained is a candidate expansion plan, a trial expansion plan, which of course is not going to be the optimal at the beginning, because here we have a relaxation. So then what we do is that we use this expansion plan, this trial expansion plan, in order to improve the approximation that we have of the economic dispatch relaxation. And how do we improve this approximation of the economic dispatch? We start to add more cuts to the value functions of our economic dispatch approximation. And then we just continue in this way throughout iterations. So we have this proposition that shows that this idea, this second stage relaxation algorithm, actually converges to the optimal value of the problem, and more so that it terminates after infinitely many iterations, so that we are sure that we arrive actually at some point to the optimal value. And now, with regards to parallel computing, we have performed the following. So here what we do is actually a quite straightforward procedure. Essentially, each uncertainty realization or each climatic GR is going to be handled by a different CPU. So here, for instance, in this case, as we have just three scenarios, then the blue CPU handles the first one, the orange CPU handles the second one, and the red CPU handles the third one. In our setting, as we have 35 climatic GRs, then we are going to use 35 CPUs. There are, of course, some drawbacks of this parallelization strategy. One is, for instance, that DC is going to be a synchronous algorithm, so it's going to be susceptible to known synchronization issues. Also is the question of, okay, let's say that we have available 50 computers, or 50 CPUs. So how do we split these 50 CPUs among, how do we split the work among these 50 CPUs? So, okay, there are some things here, some issues, but this is the parallelization strategy that we have followed here. And so now let's go and discuss some results. So we have tested a variety of alternative techniques. For instance, we have considered the L-shaped method. We have also considered progressive hedging. We also have considered a projective subgradient-based method. We also consider this columns constraint generation-based algorithm. Here, for this last one, actually, we didn't implement it, but we rather provide a quantitative argument explaining why this won't work for our scheme. And for the other ones, what we do is that we let these algorithms run, and we compare them against the performance that we have with our approach with the exact same parameters. So here in this first slide, what you see is the conversion evolution using 35 computers. Here on the figure on your left, on this one, you see the gap evolution. So here the x-axis is going to be the elapsed time, the y-axis is going to be the relative optimality gap. Here we consider two algorithms. Here on green is our approach, the second stage relaxation algorithm. The blue one is the L-shaped. And what we see here is that after 4 hours, essentially we are done. While for the L-shaped, after 30 hours of computation, the optimality gap that we are obtaining is still far from being of practical use. On the panel on the right, what you see is the upper bound evolution of the algorithms. So as before, the green one is our approach. The black one here is going to be the progressive hedging algorithm. The red one is going to be a subgradient-based algorithm. And what we see is that, well, yeah, for the progressive hedging, after 30 hours, well, the algorithm is still quite not there. The subgradient method, okay, this one was not performing actually that bad, but still after 30 hours of computation, it didn't reach the quality of the solution that we just found in 4 hours. Here, well, something that I would also like to point out is that this subgradient method actually it also hasn't been proposed in the past in order to solve this type of algorithm. So this is also a new technique that we introduced here. So this is regarding the convergence of the algorithms. So now, what I would like to discuss is the value of the stochastic solution. So this value of the stochastic solution is a common metric found within the stochastic optimization literature. And so here, the idea of this value of stochastic solution is to try to assess whether going from a stochastic problem makes sense or not. So the first item that we have right here is this WS solution, the wait and see solution, which is the best solution if we perfectly anticipate the climatic conditions. The SP solution is just the stochastic solution, which is the solution that we obtain with one of these schemes. And something that happens is that the wait and see solution is always less or equal than the stochastic solution. And ideally, what we would like to see is that there is a gap between these two, between the wait and see solution and the stochastic solution. Because if it happens that these solutions are essentially the same, then it means that our stochastic solution that doesn't know exactly what's going to happen in the future is going to be the same as we allow the solution to perfectly anticipate the climatic conditions. So there, having a stochastic solution may not make much of a sense. And in fact, what we observe here, so this second row is this difference, is the difference between this wait-and-see solution and the stochastic solution. And for this particular problem, we see that is around 2.7%, which I think is a number of a relevant number. Now let's go back to this slide. So this last bullet refers to the average wait-and-see solution. So this corresponds to averaging the expansion plans that correspond to perfectly anticipated climatic conditions. And this solution is in particular of interest for us because, first of all, it's quite easy to compute. You don't really need to do something sophisticated. It's quite easy and efficient. And in fact, this is also what ENSUI computed as an approximation for the stochastic solution for the ERA 2021. And what happens is that this average wait-and-see solution is always going to be is always going to be greater, as compared to our stochastic solution. And so here again, what we would like to see is that there is a difference here between this average wait-and-see and the stochastic solution. And this is what we see here in the last row of this graph, where we see that the relative difference between these two solutions is near 1.5%, which again, I think that shows that there is an important difference between these two solutions. So now what I would like to do is to go a bit deeper in the cost comparison. So essentially, so far we have two candidate expansion plans, right? One of them is the one that we obtained with our stochastic solution, the one that we obtained with this algorithm that I just mentioned. The other one is this average wait-and-see solution, which is the one that ENSUI used for ERA 2021. And so we want to understand how different are they in terms of costs. So here in this slide, you see the breakdown of the cost into four categories. We have the operational cost, the retirement cost, expansion cost, and the load shedding costs. So on the figure of on the left, you see the absolute differences between these two solutions. So in blue, you see the average wait-and-see solution. In orange, you see the stochastic solution. In terms of operational costs, they are essentially the same. There is no much of a difference there. Where we do observe a difference is in the retirement, expansion, and in the load shedding. And concretely, what we observe with this stochastic solution is that it tends to protect itself more. It tends to invest more, so it has a higher expansion, and at the same time, it has less retirements as compared to the average wait-and-see solution. And as a consequence, also this implies that in terms of load shedding, they are also quite different, as you see right here. And in fact, if we now take a look at the panel on the right, we see the relative difference between these quantities. And what we observe is that in terms of load shedding, there is actually a quite huge difference between these two solutions. In terms of load shedding, we see a difference of more than 120%. And actually, this is going to be important because these adequacy metrics precisely rely a lot on the load shedding that you have. So here on this slide, I have computed, we computed some adequacy metrics. So we have the LOLE, which is the average number of hours where the load was not satisfied within a year. We also have the ENS, which is the average load not satisfied within a year. Here in these figures, this y-axis is going to correspond to the main European regions. And the x-axis here on the figure on the left is going to correspond to the LOLE. On the figure on the right is going to correspond to the ENS. The color coding is the same as before. Blue is this average wait-and-see. The orange one is the stochastic solution. And what we see here is that there is quite a difference in terms of the adequacy metrics that we are obtaining if we use one or another technique. And so here, what I would like to highlight is that, or the message here behind this slide is that if you go for some approximated techniques, such as the average weight and see solution, then maybe you are going to lose quite a lot of information in terms of adequacy. So here, I think that also something that I would like to highlight is that the way to not interpret this slide is to say, oh, no, the stochastic solution is better because it has less LOLE or less ENS. I think that really the relevant message is here that if you go and use an approximated strategy, then you are going to lose some information in terms of adequacy. So with this now, I would like to kind of close this talk. So in terms of contribution, we have seen a methodological contribution, which is that by means of the composition schemes and parallel computing, we are able to solve this EVA problem for the ERA 2021 edition. We have also some algorithmic contributions. We have proposed, well, this, I didn't describe here the projective subgradient algorithm, but this is something that we also did here. We proposed also the second stage relaxation scheme. We have proposed parallel implementations. In terms of policy contribution, we have done an analysis on the impact that approximated approaches may have. And in particular, we have seen that there are differences when you take a look at the adequacy indicators. As a future work, for instance, one could be interested in the multi-GR approach. Also something that we consider is the reliability constraints. And actually, this is going to be the topic of next talk by Marilena, who has done a really nice work to try to tackle how to include reliability constraints into all of this. And also another question is, okay, in order to do this EVA is actually cost system immunization what you would like to solve. And yeah, with that, I would like to close. Thank you very much.
I was refueling coffee, so I'm not sure you mentioned this, but all this started with an internship that Daniel did at ENSOI, where the ERA problem was thrown to him by ENSOI. So in summary, what he did is he took it from 3 scenarios and now is able to solve it for 35. So that was an important practical contribution. I'm getting the microphone to Manolis.
Thank you very much for the very interesting presentation. Actually, I have a lot of questions. Most of them are probably basic, to say the best, stupid in the worst scenario. If I understood correctly, the first stage is a pure integer problem, while the second stage is a pure LP problem. First question. Second one. If that is the case, I would expect that you would decompose on the climate scenario, not on the, let's say, time level. You said you decomposed on the time level. So why did you choose 4 days? Let's say not 1 or 10 days. Last question. You mentioned 35 CPUs. Is that what you had available, or it has to do with the problem? What if you had 10 or 100 CPUs? And if you can disclose, did you parameterize them in a certain way? Did you disable hyperthreading? Anything you can share with us? Thank you.
Yeah, sure. Thank you very much for your questions. So regarding your first question, and the first question was on the. Actually, can you remind me the first question? Sorry, okay, yeah, right. So regarding that one, no. So actually, the first stage is not. So we are here not considering a unit commitment model. So it's a continuous model. So the first stage is continuous. In principle, the methodology can also be applied if we consider a first stage which is integer. So there is nothing preventing to apply this technique to that case. I think that we have not really tested that approach, but from a theoretical point of view, there is nothing preventing us to go on that direction. But what I have shown here is continuous. Your other question was regarding on how do we split the work. So so we just select for a 4-day operational problem because I think it was just a nice trade-off between. So if you have, for instance, 1-day operational problem, then over the full year, you are going to have 365 sub-problems. So okay, maybe they were too much. But also at the same time, if you consider, I don't know, like 1 month sub-problem, so instead of 4 days, 1 month, then the problem again is too large. So 4 days, I think it was just a nice trade-off. So not having too much sub-problem, but at the same time, having something fast to solve. And regarding your last question on the parallel computing, so here actually we are restricted. So each scenario, each climatic year is going to be handled by a different computer. So as we have 35 climatic years, we just use 35 CPUs. If we have so in principle we have available more computers, but the thing is that here, yeah, we were not sure how to use those extra resources in this parallel strategy that we have followed. So if you have 50 CPUs, then these 15 extra CPUs, they are just lost, let's say. Something that you could do, for instance, in order to try and use more CPUs is to available some kind of allow, as you mentioned, hyper-threading, so that when you solve each CPU, so that when you solve each sub-problem, then each sub-problem is now being handled by more CPUs, but that's something that we didn't consider. So yeah, that's it.
One more thing to add, we are looking into that now in the context of Marilena's work. It's a huge drain for the quota on the cluster, so you totally abuse your quota if you do that, but it accelerates the algorithm. And also regarding your first question, it's a relaxation within a relaxation. So we decompose both by scenario, and then each scenario we break it into 4-day chunks. Name and affiliation.
Jacques Cartevel, UC Louvain. Thanks, Daniel. Have you thought about looking at the adequacy matrix in a distribution way? Like instead of having the mean of the energy not served, you look at it you get a distribution of the energy not served for the different problems, and then you try to optimize it in that way. Or for the cost, like
yeah, I think that we haven't followed that direction because so actually the way in which the ERA study is structured is that you first do this economic viability assessment. So on that stage, you are actually you don't say anything about adequacy. So it's just a capacity generation expansion problem aimed at seeing how the power network will look like in some target year. And after you have done this step, then you calculate this adequacy metrics. So these are like separated. So we have not done what you suggest. If you one would like to do something in the, as you suggest, trying to more like optimize or within the whole scheme, the adequacy metrics, I think it will be more related to adding some reliability constraints or something like that, I imagine. Yeah, that's.
Dimitrios Kalinos, Technische Universität Dresden. Related to this one, for the metrics, do you only consider one weather year for the target year? Or from the climate scenarios that you consider, is it just for one? The metrics for the.
So we have a target year, and for this target year we have 35 climatic conditions, and the LOLE is the average over these 35.
And the plots that you presented
are the average over these 35. Let's say climatic conditions.
And the reason why the ERA 2021 was not approved by Acer was this approximation technique, or did they want explicitly the stochastic approach?
I think that I don't know.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Maybe Alain can save us again on that question. Alain, are you with us? Yes, he's always there.
I don't remember exactly the reason, sorry.
Did you hear the question? Ah, you don't know the reason. Okay.
Yes,
yeah,
yes.
Okay.
No, the question, and I perfectly know that is a refuse, but I don't know the reason.
Okay. One last question by Thimis. Yeah.
Yes, maybe I have a question, but how do you tackle demand response in your when you account for energy not served? It is really a blackout in real time. You mean you are not able to feed the load, or is it the consequence of a day-ahead market when you can, in fact, if the price hit 3,000 euro, you may imagine that some demand will reduce their consumption, and then you will have a real time which is still feasible but with a reduced load.
Yeah, no, I think that here is just that we are not able, so that the model is not able to satisfy the load.
Okay, in real time, full stop. Thank you.
Let's thank Daniel to move on.